think it's a beautiful thing to want to do better, to know more, to do more. But sometimes we take that desire to grow and we change it into this self-doubt. So self-improvement becomes self-criticism. We're no longer just growing, we're also hating ourselves for where we are currently at. And I don't think growth necessarily has to lead to the spiral of negativity in ourselves. I think we can grow and stay in a positive mental space and self-trust and believing in ourselves. But how do we stay out of that spiral? How do we make sure that we are growing while also loving ourselves and loving where we're currently at? Hi, I am A Rose, and my first name actually is just the letter A. I haven't always gone by that in my life. For one reason, it sounds a lot like hay. So it was hard to be called that. During the one period of time I did try to go by it. Also, even though it's my legal name, it was always intended that I would go by Abby. But on this channel, I'm going by A for two reasons. One, with a name like A Rose, kind of have to use it. And two, this channel is all about being more authentic and true to myself. It's all about growing back into who I truly am. And I think embracing this unique part of me, my unique name, is a perfect way to start. I am all about growing. I've been that way a lot of my life. I think especially after college, I went down the path of mindset growth, and I've grown so much over the last 7 years, and I still have a lot to improve on. And so I find myself a lot of times in this spiral from wanting to grow down to feeling bad about myself. This spiral actually happened to me just last Friday. I uploaded my last video. I was feeling really good about it. I was feeling really proud of some different things that I did, some new things I tried out. I was really proud of myself for sticking to my commitment of posting content all month. I even wrote down in my planner, a win for the month was I posted quality content all month long. And then I went inside, I made breakfast, it was time to clean the kitchen and do some tasks that didn't require as much thought. They can be done with a podcast or YouTube video playing in the background. And I started to listen to videos, and YouTube rightly knows that the great thing to suggest to me is how to make better YouTube videos. So I'm like, absolutely, I'll watch this video on how to talk to a camera better. So I start the video and I got some good advice, talk to the camera like you're talking to a friend, all the typical advice. Actually, that is the first thing that I was thinking. It's like, sometimes I don't think I imagine a friend in the camera. So I found a good piece of advice. And here's the thing. Learning is good. You can find good pieces of advice. So I found a good piece of advice, but I did not stop there. I kept watching, and I went into other content and how to blow up on YouTube and how to make sure your channel gets unhidden and seen. And before I knew it, I was 4 or 5 videos deep. I no longer was gaining anything. I was probably really just numbing out, like using it as a distraction. You can numb out with more than just alcohol or substances, TV or media. I can also use that to numb out. And I can feel myself when I go down the content hole too far, when I've been listening to things for too long. I can feel the shift from learning to just numbing, which is a shift to watch for. Anyway, I got to the point where I was like, wow, I've got to turn this off. And I got to a pretty negative headspace. By the time I was finished with it all and I sat down to do some more work on YouTube videos, I was feeling so much self-doubt. I had gone from thinking about ways to improve to this spiral of feeling like I was terrible at YouTube videos. I didn't even want to post. I didn't even want to engage with the platform because I felt like I had way too many things to improve on, and I was so far away from being as good as I wanted to be. And I went down the spiral mentally. I had gone from just wanting to be a little better to feeling like I was terrible, like I might as well not do it. So maybe you've had the same experience in your life. It might not be about YouTube videos, but maybe it's anything you're trying to grow in. Maybe it's parenthood. Maybe you've been listening to a lot of podcasts or reading books on parenting, and you start off thinking, I just want to be a little bit better. I'm a good parent and I want to be a little bit better. And then you start reading and you start to spiral and maybe even get to a point where you think you're a terrible parent, and you put the book down and you're feeling overwhelmed and then you're feeling frustrated, which guess what? Definitely leads to worse parenting. I could guarantee. I mean, it could be any area of your life where you're trying to grow. I mean, it could be painting, it could be some kind of creative outlet. I think it can be so many different areas where growth can lead to the spiral. I know you care deeply about doing your best at whatever it is you're doing and you're wanting to grow in. And that is why you're looking to grow, which is wonderful. We just have to be careful that what starts with curiosity about how to grow doesn't turn into comparison and self-doubt and overwhelm and a feeling like we can never grow. I think of it kind of like we're hiking up a hill. We're going on this beautiful journey up a hill. We're moving up and we think we're close to the top. So we're feeling really proud of ourselves. We think, yes, I did it. I've got this. And then all of a sudden, the clouds part and you realize that you're just in the foothills. And the peak is so far away that you're maybe only 10% of the way done with the climb. You have so much more to go. The distance you traveled maybe doesn't even feel that far. And it can be easy to have the mindset of, oh, I'm so far away. Like, I can never reach it. I'm just going to give up. How am I not better? How am I not farther up this mountain? And it's good to part those clouds. It's good to gain the knowledge, to have a clear vision of where the peak really is. We don't want to be at the top of a little hill thinking we've made it to the peak. We want to get to the peak. So it is good to want to grow. It is good to have a clear vision of where you're going. But only if that can be a compass, it can be a guide, and it's not such a heavy burden that you decide to give up, that you decide not to even try to grow. Before we get into how to stop the spiral or keep it from ever starting to begin with, I want to talk about what's underneath the spiral. Because the desire to grow doesn't always have to lead to a spiral of self-doubt. We can just grow without hating where we're currently at. So what is under the spiral? I think a big thing is perfectionism. I am certainly a recovering perfectionist. I know that a lot of us are, which is probably why we hear about perfectionism so much in these kind of videos. A lot of people are talking about it because it's something a lot of us struggle with. In my life, perfectionism comes in a lot of forms. It comes in this feeling of not wanting to start until I'm fully ready, until I'm good enough. It comes in this struggle to finish things because I'm trying to be too perfect. I'm doing way too many takes. It's that mindset that if it's not perfect, it might as well not be done at all. It's that mindset that it's better to not put it out there if it's not the very best. It's better to wait to do something until we've grown a little bit more. We know a little bit more. We're a little bit clearer. We're a little bit better. And so perfectionism and that tendency can make learning about how to get better, it can make that desire turn into an inability to start, or an inability to act, or this feeling of not being good enough or worthy of something because we're not all the way to the top of the mountain yet. Also, I think another thing that's behind the spiral is either or thinking. That idea that either I'm good at something or I'm not. Either I'm a good YouTuber or I shouldn't make videos. I'm a terrible YouTuber. Either I'm a good parent or I'm a terrible parent. It's this black and white either or thinking where we don't appreciate the nuances. We don't see that I am a good YouTuber and I have a lot of ways to improve. I am a good parent and I can continue to learn more. I think those two mindsets right there are the biggest culprit, at least for me. Dealing with perfectionism and dealing with either or thinking. So if you're watching this video and it's resonating, it might be because you're struggling either with perfectionism or you're struggling with either or thinking. So let's jump into some things I use to stay out of the spiral to begin with. First thing is affirmations. And I know, just like perfectionism, affirmations have been talked about a lot. At their core, they're just affirming yourself. They're just those intentional thoughts that you're giving to remind yourself how far you've grown, how valuable you are. So my affirmations could look like: I speak with clarity. I am giving love through my content that does not have to be perfect. I am worthy of sharing my ideas. I have ideas other people need to hear. I can share something imperfectly and it still provide value. Giving myself those affirmations, especially before watching growth content, is so important. So say I'm going to go watch a video about how to be a better YouTuber. Maybe I watch a video that's how to speak to a camera better. I could start, before I start the video, I can take a moment to say to myself, you're doing a wonderful job. You're showing up. You have improved so much already. This is a part of, like, before looking up the mountain to see where I want to go, I can look back and see where I've come, and I can appreciate where I'm at. Like, I'm so proud of how much you've grown. Like, if I go look at, I have an old channel that I transitioned from, and so the first video on that channel is a couple years old, and I go look at it and I can see how much I've improved. I can see how much my camera presence has improved, how much more comfortable I've gotten. So I can affirm myself. I think Kato saw a bird. I can affirm myself. I can tell myself I'm doing so well before I start watching the video. And I think this transitions nicely into another piece of advice I would have to stop the spiral from ever happening, which is avoid either or thinking, or to make it actionable, embrace both and thinking. So focusing on that and part, saying things like, I am a wonderful YouTuber and I'm wondering how I can get better. I want to grow in this area and I appreciate how much I've already grown and how great I'm doing. I want to be a better parent and I am doing a wonderful job. It's embracing that and. You can want to grow and be so deeply proud of where you're at right now. Wanting to grow does not mean you're terrible and you need so much help. You can be proud of yourself and want to grow. Another important part of not having the spiral happen, and this is where I went wrong last Friday, is limiting information intake. And in general, it's probably good to limit our content, which I know I probably shouldn't be saying this because I probably should be saying, hey, go subscribe to my channel and binge watch all my old videos. But no, we actually do need to limit our content. And we especially need to limit the content about the area that we're really working on improving and growing in. We really don't need more than one lesson a day. You can't really remember that many lessons anyway. So at a certain point, if you watch too many content videos, like I do all the time, it gets to a point where you're not actually learning anything. And it stops being positive and helpful. I think one piece of content and one lesson is plenty. And then you can really focus on implementing instead of focusing on how far you have left to go, how much you need to improve. If you only have one area or one thing you want to implement, that feels doable. That is easier to accept that you're doing a wonderful job and you want to improve in this one area. Once you have 10 things you want to improve on, it can start to feel more obvious how far you have left to go, and that's where it's really easy to start with the self-doubt, self-criticism. Another thing to stop the spiral is avoiding comparison. Make sure when you're consuming that content that it's actually lessons you're gaining, actually advice, and it's not a comparison. So avoid going to like for me, I need to avoid it, especially if I'm already sensitive about it. I need to avoid going to an account that I might compare myself to. And when I catch my comparison, I need to remind myself that they're on a different part of their journey. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I am on my path. And I can take a lesson. I can be like, okay, Jay Shetty really knows how to speak from his heart. I admire the love he brings onto camera. Awesome. There's my lesson, speak from my heart. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not as good as Jay Shetty. Because, well, obviously, obviously, he's been doing it for so much longer. And the problem with comparison, and this is just a sidebar, is the problem with comparison. If I compare myself to Jay Shetty and say I'm not as good, then I can also find a new content creator and I can bolster myself by being like, oh, I'm better. And neither of those emotions are good or helpful. I think avoiding comparison, avoiding those thoughts, releasing them when they come. If I start to have a comparison thought, I can change it into admiration. I can change it into an understanding of how he got there. So back to Jay Shetty, if I say he speaks from the heart, I'm not going to compare him and say, oh, he has such a more loving tone than me. I'm going to say, it seems like he's in a really good mental spot. Maybe I can do better about spending more time in meditation before I record my video and really focusing on speaking from my heart. And that's a lesson. That is an action. I've changed it from comparison to an actual action. Because those thoughts of comparison, they often are lies that, oh, this person's just innately better than me in this area. And that shuts down growth because you're just focusing on your lack, and you're focusing on criticizing yourself, and you're not even thinking that there is a way to grow. Actions, very tangible action steps remind us that we are in control of how we grow and that things aren't innate, that they are things we can develop. And I think that's one part of the spiral. That's one thing that leads us to the spiral, is having those thoughts of, I either have it or I don't. And that's why when we get overwhelmed thinking about how far we have left to go, it can get us into that mindset of shame, of feeling like we just don't have what it takes. Which is why in this advice I'm saying limit the number of lessons you have, avoid comparison, remember you're doing a great job, and there is places to grow, and you don't have to be perfect to provide value. Maybe those things can help if you haven't gotten in the spiral yet and you want to just avoid it. But what about when you're already in the spiral? when you're already feeling the overwhelm, the desire to quit, the self-doubt and criticism, what to do then, how to step out of that spiral. Number one, if you're still listening to content, turn it off. And I guess I could say, please, please finish this video for the algorithm and subscribe. But you know what? I'm not gonna suggest another video at the end of this video, because at the end of this video, I know YouTube won't like it and might not suggest this video very much since I'm saying it, but at the end of this video, if you feel like you're in a spiral or you've already watched a lot of content, turn it off. You don't need to hear more external noise. You need to hear the voice inside of you. Turn off the external noise. Turn off YouTube. Go for a walk. Get outside in nature is another thing that can help, and is another way to have quiet. Even if you have your kiddos, it's different to have kids laughing around you than to be listening to something, to listening to how to improve in some area. So if you have kiddos, take them outside and enjoy some time in nature and in quiet, appreciating all the things about yourself. And that's another thing. I want you to appreciate qualities in yourself, especially around the area you're spiraling in. So take a moment to write 5 things that you're wonderful at. I could write the 5 things of, I am good at scheduling in a time to make videos. I'm really proud of myself for getting up early and catching the early morning light. I'm getting much better at my lighting. I am getting much better at sharing things that are true to me. I am getting much better at talking to you like I would talk to a friend and not feeling as nervous. I'm getting better. Well, you get the point. I don't have to go through it all with you. You don't. But find those 5 things. Find 5 traits, 5 moments that you are proud of, to remind yourself, to re-anchor yourself in the fact that you have already grown and you're already doing a good job. A part of that could be writing. Journaling is such a helpful practice. So if you have a chance after you've turned off the content and maybe after you've gone outside, maybe journal. Write those 5 things down in a journal. Journal about how you're feeling. Check yourself about what kind of thoughts you're having. How are you speaking to yourself? And intentionally write down those 5 things that you're proud of. And it can be 3. I say 5 because 5 is a nice number. And you want at least more than 1. You need to get enough to get yourself in the headspace of, wow, I'm actually doing a really good job. I'm actually really, really proud of myself. So growth does not mean hating where you're at. Real growth is about appreciating where you're at, appreciating your capability, appreciating your ability to grow. It's about understanding that we all can grow. No matter where we are in the journey, no matter how wonderful we all have the ability to grow. And it is valuable to learn new things, to want to improve. And you are allowed to want to improve while still being deeply, deeply proud of where you're currently at. The goal is not to be perfect, because there's no such thing. The goal is to continue to progress forward, to continue to get better, because that is what life is all about. Even nature's such a great example. Nature's never trying to become the perfect tree. The trees in nature, they're not like have some ideal that, okay, this is where I'm perfect and this is where I'm valuable and I'm going to hide until I can suddenly be 30 feet tall and then I'm perfect. No, they're always growing. They're always expanding. The growth is the point. And that's what we need to remember, is the growth is life and it's the point. And we're not trying to arrive at some perfect version. We're just trying to keep moving forward. So if you are in the spiral right now, I hope my content has lowered some of your anxiety and given you some next steps, which starting with turn off YouTube. Please subscribe if you did find this video valuable, so that when you come back to YouTube, you can check out some of the other videos I've made. But turn off, turn it off, and go outside and reconnect to yourself, reconnect to your value. Remember how proud of you are. You are allowed to want to grow. You are allowed to want to improve while also deeply, deeply loving who you are and being so very proud of yourself for where you're at. If no one's told you today, I am proud of you and I believe in you. You're growing so well and appreciate how far you've come.